right, I've been in the room during some of these pretty interesting moments in the White House press briefing room, like the one that caused Jim Acosta's press pass to be suspended, or the many times that Sarah Huckabee Sanders has had testy exchanges, to say the least, with the press corps. And I started covering the White House, literally just this year.
Testy is, I think, very diplomatically put. Our next guest has followed the president since he launched his campaign, and in his new book, Mr. Trump's Wild Ride, the thrills, chills, screams, and occasional blackouts of an extraordinary presidency, CBS Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett details the most significant moments of President Trump's presidency. Major Garrett has reported on 4 different presidencies for 3 different news outlets, and he joins us now. Great to have you, sir.
Good morning. Great to be with you. Happy Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to get your
thoughts. I say that a lot these days.
Not that it ever stops. I mean, it used to be there was a stop. There's no stop anymore.
I tell myself that Friday means something. It usually doesn't, but I tell myself it does.
Major, I would love to get your thoughts on what's going on with Jim Acosta right now, particularly given your experience in the Obama administration when there were efforts to shut you out of the briefing room.
There was never an effort to shut me out of the briefing room. What there was, and I will just quote the Obama White House, there was a war with the news network that I work for, Fox. The White House said it was at war with Fox News. I was its most visible editorial representative on the White House grounds as a senior White House correspondent for Fox. The White House would always pull me aside and say, well, really, Major, we're not at war with you. And I said, stop talking to me like that, because when you're at war with my network, you by definition are questioning and assailing my journalistic credibility and the work I do here every day. So don't tell me it's not about me. It is about me. Now, they never tried to pull my pass. But they had this sort of arm's length relationship to Fox and tried to demonize it on a daily basis. So that's another part of American history and journalism in the White House press corps I think at least should be noted at this moment. That it's not without precedent, and it's not without some high-level people saying things very aggressive about a single news network. And I will tell you, back in that time, I didn't feel the collaborative and collegial sense of we're all in this together.
Well,
that is quite risen.
I noticed
in this
that too.
moment,
That's why I brought it up.
Did you feel that there was any legitimacy to that criticism? And also, do you see that moment from the Obama presidency as almost a bridge to what has now been taken to the next level?
Well, certainly assailing the White House press corps is not a new phenomenon in the press. Richard Nixon did it. Lyndon Johnson had his run-ins with the White House press corps. Almost every administration has at one level. But that was a White House saying, we're at war. That's their phrase, not mine. And when it ended, when the White House decided to stop picking fights with Fox, I was asked live on Fox News, what was my position on this? I said I was a conscientious objector. I didn't go to war with the White House, and I didn't go to war on behalf of my network. I did my job every day to serve the audience that I served, asking questions, reporting stories, and doing the job of daily journalism at the White House, which, trust me, is hard enough. Without the stressors of some larger political argument being made about the relationship of one network or one reporter to the White House itself. So that was the position I took then. It's the position I take now. Everyone who covers the White House, or any beat in Washington, or any beat at all, but certainly in Washington because we're much more scrutinized, lives and dies by their own belief, their credibility, their accountability, and the work that they do. I'll stand on that.
So how did you bring your experience of covering these 3 very different administrations to probably the most extraordinary administration in American history? What were the things that you had to fall back on in some of the most stressful and strenuous periods?
It's a great question. And there's this relentless conversation in this country. Do you like the Trump presidency or do you not? And those who don't like the Trump presidency assume it's all chaotic and it hits them at a deeply emotional and traumatizing level, and they may assume that's the only the story that matters. The point of my book is, if you don't like the Trump presidency, you ought to pay attention to things that have already been done. That if you disagree with them, you're going to have to, from a political perspective, challenge them and work to undo if you really want to. But you better understand what has already happened. Don't assume these powers of the presidencies have somehow been diluted just because you don't like the occupant of the White House. Powers of presidency are real. Things have happened.
So give some examples of
And if you like the Trump presidency, you say the media never says anything that's happened. This book is exactly about what has happened.
So what are some of those significant moments?
We have a new tax code that's probably going to be with this country for a decade at least, if not longer. We fundamentally have changed the way we tax corporations, individuals, and everyone in between. Immigration, we enforce it differently, we talk about it differently. Our image internally and externally, fundamentally different. Deregulation, the most aggressive deregulatory president in modern American history, more so than Ronald Reagan, and I explain in the book why. You think easy to write a book about, or a chapter about deregulation. Not the sexiest topic, but it matters.
Right.
And if you want to talk about the federal bench from the Supreme Court on down, as big and rapid a transformation has been achieved, if you consider an achievement, of any modern American president. Those are just 4 areas. I heard you talking about Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, a whole chapter devoted to that. Fundamentally different from Obama, yes, obviously, but also George W. Bush.
Right.
And those changes have wrought different relationships and different conversations with authoritarians in that region. And I explain why in the book.
One of the best praises of your book that I've seen is that you give respect both to the Trump presidency and to the people who support him. Why do you think that's not broadly representative in the media at large?
I don't know. Yeah. I wish I had a better answer for that. I wish I had an answer for that. Because the Trump presidency is so different, I think newsrooms respond to that differentness more than they respond to the actual workaday product of the White House. For example, there is possibly a bipartisan breakthrough on an important issue this week.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice reform. Very little coverage because there's so much else going on. The president churns a lot of that himself for his own reasons. And the media finds that a more delectable story. I went to the substantive part because you mentioned my history covering previous presidencies. That's what's always the most important. When the historians write the accounts, the chaos or the controversy drifts away.
Right.
Yeah.
The substance matters and the substance stays. And the substance reflects the political verdict of that election that made that person president in the first place.
Isn't part of the issue, though, that these news agencies, their ratings are way up? And what people want to see is the drama and the fight and the reality show. There's a concern that if you put the deregulation chapter on TV, that people are going to change the channel and see who's yelling at who and what aide is throwing who under the bus.
There is certainly that. And I knew that, and I, to a certain degree, feel that day to day covering the White House. All of us do. And in a very personal way, the book was kind of therapeutic for me in that sense. It was a place for me to go and record the substantive, most important parts of the presidency that have already occurred. And like I said, I'm not telling the audience that these changes are good or bad. That's for the reader to decide. What I'm telling you is that they've happened, likely to last, and already form, again, whether you're a huge advocate of the Trump presidency or a huge opponent of it, legacy-making items.
What do you think we'll remember most in 100 years about the president? Just based on his first year alone, or in the last 2 years?
I think the most, 100 years from now, I think the courts will be the most important aspect, especially if he is a 2-term president. Because for all of the criticism of Donald Trump, of having short attention span and a sort of a volcanic or volatile approach to the day-to-day rigors of the presidency, he is most methodical and disciplined about the court. At the highest level, the Supreme Court, but also district courts and the appellate court. And he has lots of people around him who are helping him with that. And that method is repeatedly methodical and largely successful. It's why during the midterms he so conspicuously prioritized the Senate Republican majority over the House Republican majority. Why the House doesn't help him approve court nominees. The Senate does.
This is a president who lies, issues false statements, way more than any of his predecessors. How do you think the press has done in terms of fact-checking, making clear what's true and what's not? Like, how do you handle that?
So one of the things I talk about in the book quite early on is my encounters with Trump supporters on this very question. And they would frequently tell me, I'm not interested in a fact-checking of a singular statement that candidate Trump made. He's talking about a larger truth. A larger truth about border security. A larger truth about trade. And just the general trajectories about how things feel more unsafe as far as crime. And I would say, well, the statistics, I don't care. I feel less safe, therefore it's a larger truth. For Trump supporters, the trajectory and the big ideas that they see him talking about matter so much more than individual or individualized details, facts, what they consider the incessant fly-specking of reporters on Trump because they can't stand him. So at 2 levels it works for Trump. He reinforces his supporters about these larger truths, And he proves that the media is relentlessly hostile to him because all they do is fact check him about these subterranean, lesser important truths.
But do those, quote, larger truths come from the ether, or do they come from Fox News and other outlets that have led people to believe this is really what's going on?
In some cases, they come from input that is derived from Fox or blogs or other places. And in some cases, they're what he has said about these issues for 30 years. If you go back to his early books, Change the Names of the Countries.
Right. The trade piece is very consistent.
Immigration, very consistent. Abortion, not consistent.
Yeah.
He definitely has been. And if I write a second book about the second or the first term of the Trump presidency, I will have a whole chapter devoted to questions about life, because he has been also methodical, aggressive, to that perspective, successful on their agenda, which he, in ways he never was.
And evangelical Christians are the most solid base of his support.
Oddly, then that's a very interesting relationship, hard to explain in a lot of respects, but they're wildly supportive. And again, on these larger truths, these sort of more dynamic truths for them. But this question of truth and truthiness predated Trump, but he is a brilliant from a strategic point of view. And I'm not praising him as a reporter because I want all politicians to traffic in mistruths. All I have to say as a political reporter, when you're able to do that and suffer no repercussions, there is something strategic about it that you at least have to appraise and say, wow, that's different. Because every other political figure I've covered, aspiring to the American presidency, never went in that direction.
No.
And the worst cliche in all of Washington, and there are so many that compete for that title, but doubling down is, in my opinion, one of the worst.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Game
double down.
changer is another one.
There's so many competitors.
Two interesting
But he is a
books of these
bulldozer.
titles. Yeah.
He's just a bulldozer in the sense of larger truths, my truth. I believe it, therefore it's true. That's a transactional approach to facts that no American political leader has ever really embraced.
Is there any going back from that?
I think there always is a going back from whatever is current in American politics. Okay? Slogans die away. Slogans have a vitality, but they also die away. That's true in all sorts of marketing, and it's certainly true in the very short life of political branding. What I think is fascinating about the Trump presidency is that it builds on a different kind of branding that was also successful, and that's Barack Obama. Barack Obama was not a Democrat. He was a brand before he was a Democrat. And that brand allowed him to challenge a formidable Democrat and a Democratic Party aligned in 2007 and 2008, because I covered that campaign, to make Hillary Clinton the nominee, toppled that with this brand that was big: hope, change, a look, a feel, a concept that you could pour all sorts of different aspirations into that meant exactly what you wanted them to mean. So does Make America Great. That brand concept to politics, I think, is one of the things, separate from Trump or Obama, that is one of the most interesting dynamics of presidential politics now. They're bigger than party.
And it's Make America Great Again, and that again, I think, is a very critical part of that slogan.
Without question, because that means whatever you want it to mean. Whatever your sense of nostalgia is, however you defined it, that's you, that's yours, and you own it. And giving that ownership in politics, hope and change. What does hope mean to me? What does change mean to me? You can pour all sorts of your individualized aspirations in that, and one political brand can carry that for you.
Yeah.
Worked for Obama, it worked for Donald Trump.
Thanks,
Great
Major.
to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much.
Facebook, facing some criticism again. Michael Avenatti is blaming a Trump conspiracy theorist for his legal troubles. And when I say Whitaker, you say Mueller. Mueller? What? I don't know. Thank you, Donna, for writing that.
Good one.
Embarrassing me in front of Major Garrett.
Rising is next. Stay tuned for more Rising.